One. Here we go. It's the My Michelle Live podcast.
My Michelle Live. My Michelle Live. Sports timeout. The fans, the field, the faith, the fun. Here's Michelle.
Yes, I am. And yes, you are. And we are getting ready for it. So brace yourselves. It's time for sports.
Go, Stack Monster. Hut.
Oh, yeah. We got the Kraken over here. Hey, guys, happy Friday to you. Take a breath. We are here to talk sports, and there's
I can go the whole podcast next time if you want.
I know he really can. I don't know where he has this like endless...
circular breathing.
That's what it's called. That's what it's called. Let me introduce you to our roundtable of commentators and a guest commentator today. We have with us Garrick Pang. He is a coach, he's a pastor, and he's the former chaplain of Seattle Sounders. He joins us today. Whoop, whoop. We have a veteran sports reporter, Rich Hallstrom. He is the 12th man, by the way, anyone listening from Seattle. He is the co-author of Thunder Sports Network. We have another author in our midst. Brent Baker is a sports writer, sports photographer, and he has a brand new Cool Beyond Cool book. And I hear it's coming in audio as well, read by someone absolutely outstanding.
I hear that's the case. Yes.
It's rumored. It's called Breaking Yesterday. It is a really amazing book. I had the chance to read it, and you can go to brentbaker.com for more information.
BrentRBaker.com.
Baker. Thank you.
Yes.
Sorry about that. Joshua
there is a
McMillen...
brentbaker.com out there that's not mine. So
well, that could
just remember, he's a pirate.
Joshua McMillen is our sports authority. You can find him on Twitter at Josh Reports Live. He is also our man on the street for our My Michelle Live podcast. So we have with us a special guest. He's a student at Syracuse in the sports. He's a sports management department. Is there a department of sports management? How cool is that? This is really cool. Michael Corbett is with us today, but it's an interesting story of how I met Michael. So recently, I told you all, I had been in Las Vegas just to watch a game where there's other people around. I went with a girlfriend, and we sat next to this crazy rowdy bunch of Massachusetts Bostonian, like, yeah, right.
Not surprised. Not surprised.
Yeah. And that was some of the best fun we had. They were just great people, really, really great people. Aside from being Patriot fans, they were really, really great people. Who knew? So it was
everybody's got something.
It was like an education, and can't we all just get along, right? They were great. But when they found out what I do, one of Michael's friends that was there said, "You got to meet my friend Michael." Michael and I spoke on the phone. I gave his friend my card and said, "Come on and join us." Michael, tell us about you and what you do.
Yeah, so I'm like you mentioned, Syracuse University sport management student, heading into my junior year, second semester, sophomore year currently. And, just really trying to, any way I can talk sports, work in sports, do something, just try to get my foot in the door. And this is a perfect opportunity to really talk sports with some great men and women here today, and obviously get a different perspective on sports as a whole and where the field is at right now. Talk some current issues. We have some current issues, and we have some current debate topics on the slate today. So it's really excited to be here and spend the next hour and learn and share. So thanks.
He obviously hadn't met us yet because he said some great men and women.
That's okay. It feels good for a moment. Let's see how he feels after this next hour is
Yep.
Oh man,
welcome, Michael.
Yeah, welcome. What a great time in sports, right? I mean, here we are. Think of where we were last year. We were thinking that we were going to have this great year in front of us. We were thinking that the world was going to be exciting, and then everything kind of fell apart. Right? I mean, it just did.
It was exciting, but it wasn't Awesome.
There was nothing exciting about it. It was so depressing. And here we are. Sports has found a way, and that's pretty exciting. And we're looking towards our special Super Bowl broadcast next week. We have the NFL playoffs that I swear I am not rooting for anyone. I just have to let you guys know I'm not rooting for anyone because in the 2019, 2020, 2021 season here, up until this point, no one that I rooted for. No one I was pulling for one. So I don't know, but you guys want to talk a little bit
even the
about
reverse psychology last week when you thought, okay, well, if I root for this team.
No, it just didn't work. It didn't work. So I'm just going to turn it over to you guys. Let's talk the playoffs and where we're at today. Anything that stood out disappointment wise, and in the aftermath, a lot of shifting, new coaching staffs and players that are being shifted. This is kind of an exciting time in the NFL. Rich?
Aaron Rodgers completely blew it. Now 1-4 in NFC championship games, and he's going to have a long off season. I hope he enjoys his guest host appearance as a Jeopardy host. It's going to come a lot earlier than he expected.
Josh, for some reasons, you've never been an Aaron Rodgers fan. So last week's game, you're also not a Tom Brady fan. So I don't, what were you doing during the game?
Yeah, it's weird. I find Tom Brady more likable than I find Aaron Rodgers likable. I mean, Aaron Rodgers is so persnickety. I mean, he has his rivalry kind of thing that goes on with his family, and that whole saga. The way that he talks about Russell Wilson and like pokes fun at his faith and as good as he is, I have a hard time being a fan. And especially like if you look at the last couple NFC championship games, I mean, two of them, he quit in the first half, and this one, there was a couple bad decisions he made where he kind of threw it away on second and third down and then blamed his coach for the call on fourth down. And I may not agree with the fourth down call, but I mean, take some personal responsibility. You had room to run and maybe not get the touchdown, but if you ran it on second and third down, even instead of throwing it away, maybe you were at the 2 or 3 yard line, like that could have been a different game there. And when Tom Brady throws 3 interceptions and you still lose the game, winning the turnover battle, you played better than Tom Brady, but you didn't win the game. And you're supposed to be the best player to ever do it at your position by some accounts. And you didn't get it done. So that was pleasing to see from my end, being a not fan of Aaron Rodgers.
Okay,
Josh, I think you hit on it that he doesn't really take responsibility for his actions.
No.
He throws his teammates under the bus. He throws his coaching staff under the bus. If there's a bus that he can throw someone under, Aaron Rodgers will definitely find it.
He actually has a bus on speed dial to call over. Yeah. They roll right up outside and go for it.
That's great. When you make that much money, you can afford to do that. So that's pretty cool. Michael, let's get our guest host in on this.
Yeah, well, me being arguably the biggest Tom Brady fan on this on the show right now, I have a little bit of a bias.
That's not hard to be.
We have all sorts of biases too, so no sweat.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I can say that I haven't seen a lot of games where Tom Brady's had 3 turnovers and he's won. And I think that this game was made out to be, Tom Brady's too old. Aaron Rodgers is at home. Tampa's a warm weather team going to play a cold weather team. And this was made to be the game that Aaron Rodgers took the next step. And this was supposed to be the Packers' year. And I think that, you look back at the game and everyone was so wrong and how Aaron Rodgers, just couldn't take that next step, and 1-4 in the NFC championship games is really, that's what his legacy is going to be defined as to this point. I think you have to look at it from that perspective. And I think with, his post-game comments, I think the biggest takeaway is that the Green Bay Packers are not a cohesive unit, not a cohesive organization. There's been a lot of turmoil the whole season with taking Jordan Love in the first round and how Aaron Rodgers was upset. And then how Matt LaFleur kicks the field goal at the end and Rodgers didn't like that, but then they can look at blame in both ways. So I think it's gonna be an interesting offseason for them. And I think when I, was kind of breaking down what Aaron Rodgers was saying after the game and how he said, some people took it as he was contemplating retirement. Some people said he was looking for a trade. I think it was a call out to the general manager to say, hey, you know, you guys you picked a quarterback. I need more help around me on both sides of the ball. So I think you're going to see the Green Bay Packers make a lot of upgrades on both sides of the ball this upcoming season. And it's going to be Aaron Rodgers, probably his last year in Green Bay if they can't get it done again. I don't think he's going to leave or request a trade, but I think that this upcoming season is big for both the franchise's future and his future.
Oh,
Okay.
and that leads into something that I wanted to bring up. We have an unprecedented amount of quarterback movement that's going to happen this offseason. And if you listen to the rumor mill, we could be looking at a situation where we have Deshaun Watson playing in San Francisco and Aaron Rodgers playing in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
And I mean, we would suddenly become the powerhouse division in football with 4 top quarterbacks playing, and that would be insane. But I mean, if you look at everyone around the league that is moving on, you know, like I mentioned, Deshaun Watson, Aaron Rodgers, probably less likely, but potentially with the drafting of Jordan Love. You see Jared Goff might be moving on, Matt Stafford demanding a trade, Drew Brees retiring, Phillip Rivers retiring. I mean, I was looking at an article and it said something like 18 quarterbacks are expected to move this offseason. I mean, we're going to see a completely different NFL by next year with all of this happening.
Well, and think about some of the other trades of Seahawks. Chad Wheeler is not a trade, but that's a big issue that we've been seeing with behind the scenes, some problems with morality. Okay, that happens, right? And you see a lot of these things in the off season. Then you have some of the coaching move arounds. The Seahawks, you know, I'm a Seahawks fan. They have hired Shane Waldron for their offensive coordinator. There's other coaching staff issues. Detroit Lions, Mark Brunell, add some changes there. And so I'm just looking at this going, this is a crazy year, 2020. 2021 is looking to be a huge mashup of differing coaches bringing differing ideas. Josh mentioning differing quarterbacks that are doing the shift, up to almost 20 of them. That's nuts. And then on top of it, what's it going to look like with COVID, Garrick?
Well, that's the whole X factor wrench, you know. I mean, it's almost as if the home field advantage has disappeared. I mean, there were home fans there in Green Bay, but I mean, it's certainly not the same. Certainly it affected the Seahawks, I would say, in our final playoff game. But
yeah, I think so. I think it really did. That's an it factor for us that we've relied on for decades here in the Seattle area. I'm a Seattle girl. It's been a big deal, and everybody knows it. You know, the 12th man is a thing. So as we look into this new year, I know before going into the Super Bowl, the Bucs and the Chiefs are COVID tested twice a day ahead of the Super Bowl. The NFL this season did something like almost 100,000 tests, like 954,000 tests, $1 million spent, and they brag about no cancellations. So we have players that set out. I mean, think of Malcolm Frigian, who was a Browns lineman. His mom died of COVID back in March of last year, and he sat out of the game. 69 other NFL players did the same. What about college recruiting? I mean, there's a lot to take into consideration, guys, when we're looking at what's going to happen this next year with all of sports, but in particular, all of these things we mentioned, all of the normal shifting, a little bit out of the ordinary quarterbacking. Boom, here we are in another weird year. How is it going to shape up? I am so excited to hear your guys' take on this.
Well, it's going to test the stability of all organizations. General managers, presidents of football operations are going to earn their paycheck this coming season, and you're going to see a really competitive offseason. Deshaun Watson can't wait to get out of Houston. If he can't jump the train next weekend, I think he'll find another way. He really wants out. And this is a guy who just signed a massive extension with the Houston Texans, and they go get a 65-year-old brand new head coach, David Culley, who has to my understanding, has no previous experience as a head coach. And at one point in time, the Houston Texans were thinking of Josh McCown as being their head coach. And Michael, that's a mess down in Houston.
Yeah, I would 100% agree. And I think, you look at all the candidates that they say they interviewed for Deshaun Watson, and some of them they didn't, but clearly Eric Bieniemy was the guy that he wanted. And I think the situation became so tumultuous with ownership and with Deshaun Watson and with JJ Watt and everything going on there that they probably had 8 candidates, and it was narrowed down to 1 because everyone said, I don't want to take this job, which is unbelievable when you think about it, that people wait their whole lives in the ranks when they move up in all sports to get a head coaching position, and for some people to quote unquote turn down this job because of how in shambles this organization is really telling. So I do agree with you, Rich. I think by next week or in the next couple of weeks we are going to see Deshaun Watson on a new team, and I wouldn't rule Jacksonville out. I think that's a sneaky spot for him. I don't know if was in Urban Meyer's head when he was thinking about taking that job. But if you're Jacksonville, people think Trevor Lawrence was the best prospect since Andrew Luck or since Peyton Manning, but he is going to be a rookie quarterback coming into a new system. If you get an established guy like Deshaun Watson, you put him on Jacksonville, it does kill your cap a little bit, but it gives the fans, and that's a fan base that needs something to rally around. So Deshaun Watson would be, I think, great for Jacksonville, great jumpstart for Urban Meyer and that crew. But I think it's going to be a tremendous offseason. And I do agree that, the general managers and the owners are going to be making their money this offseason, because there's going to be a lot of change, a lot of revenue that's going to be needed to be made for every team due to no fans. And I'm really excited for the offseason, the draft, and what the 2021 season will bring.
Yeah, I think
one
of the big.
Go ahead, guys.
Off season is going to be a crazy season because we have the usual things that switching around, and this guy's fired, this guy's hired, some of the problems of people having domestic issues that make the scene, all of those things play into the drama like a soap opera. So here we are with a lot of other issues that we throw in, COVID included. So here we go, Brent.
I think the big thing we haven't mentioned yet is the fact that the salary cap this next year is going to be smaller. And so when those numbers come out, you could see a lot of veteran players getting cut loose that in many years would not have been. So you have all these other pieces moving already. I think the free agent market is going to be really interesting when you start seeing teams having to get down below those cat numbers and still wanting to have room to make other moves. So that you want to talk about having to earn their money when they're going to have to earn their money, and they're going to have less to work with than they've had in the past.
I can just chime in quickly here. I think you really see that in baseball right now with, there are still so many players on the free agent market because no one knows what their value or their market is. And I think like baseball free agency opened like 2 months ago and no one had any idea. You see in basketball and football as players getting signed right away. In baseball, it was out of all sports to lose the most money, they were up with that, probably the top. So I think that's just a telltale sign of what you're going to see.
The difference there too is
that MLS too, guys. MLS has the collective bargaining agreement that they're trying to hold off a little bit so that they can continue paying their players throughout the season. So it's not just the NFL; everybody's feeling it.
Yeah, I think with the NFL too, the fact that most of these contracts are not guaranteed. The baseball,
they have a little more wiggle room.
The teams have more wiggle room just to cut guys. And some of them will count for more cap space than others based upon guarantees that they had in their contract, but the guys other than top stars, most of them don't have that. So you might have a 5-year contract, but after 1 year, you're you're cut loose and on the open market again. Whereas baseball, you sign a $120 million contract, someone's paying that. So yeah, the free agent market has slowed to a crawl as far as people getting signed in baseball, but you don't have this flood of players that I think we might see in the NFL because of the way their contracts are structured.
And that might be another way that the Seahawks hold on to Chris Carson. I know that he unfollowed the Seahawks and unfollowed Russell Wilson on his Twitter account, but he may be making a return to town if the salary cap, which I think, Brent, if I remember right, looking at the figures, I think they're going to settle on $180 million salary cap, which is well below what they've been operating at. So I'd still like a chance to work with 180 million bucks.
Right.
So
what was that, Josh? Closer to what?
There was some reports that it's going to be closer to 188 million. So hopefully that would be the case. I think that would leave us with around 3 million in cap space.
So does that mean, Josh, that you and I are going to split the extra 8 million?
Yeah.
You can have 4 and I'll have 4.
Perfect.
Perfect. Why not? I don't know, but if we look at some of the decrease in revenue from fans in the stands, what are we really looking at for the future? I mean, come on, COVID has touched every industry. We were just talking yesterday about the entertainment industry and how it is drastically changed. We're not going to see some of the big blockbuster multi-million-dollar films that we've seen in the past. That's Hollywood. Here we are talking sports. I don't think we're going to see a lot of difference. We're going to see some big changes. That's my opinion. What do you guys think?
Well, already Anheuser-Busch, you heard about that big announcement. They're not advertising on the Super Bowl this year. They have chosen to.
I love those commercials.
I know, right?
Bud Light, yes. Regular Bud, no. Seriously, that's the.
Yeah, the Bud Light ads were awesome.
Well, no, I'm saying though that some of their non-main brands are still.
Oh, they're still going to advertise.
Yeah, they didn't back out
okay.
all. They didn't back out
good.
all, but their main, like there's no Clydesdales.
No Clydesdales this year.
Yeah,
okay.
so that's the
Clydesdales are on a budget and they're concerned. I mean, no one wants to see Clydesdales.
Not enough feed for the horses this year, guys.
Are getting vaccinated instead.
Yeah.
We got stuff going on. Now, I'm interested to see if we actually see players kind of be willing to renegotiate contracts and lower it down a little bit, because it's going to be hard for some of these teams to compete. I mean, like Bobby Wagner making the most out of any linebacker in the league and taking a huge hit out of our cap. And not to say that he's not necessarily worth it, but he's making a couple million more than the next guy. And if you can't cut that number down a little bit, it's going to be really hard to re-sign some of these guys you want and bring in the people that you need.
It's sad, but I just think what is required there, Josh, is humility. And I don't see that happening. I mean, I think guys are going to hang on, especially if they're thinking, I mean, I would hope, I mean, in an ideal world that people would work together and say, okay, this is for the good of the team. I'm going to take a cut, but I'll look forward to seeing that day when we see it.
Garrick, I think it's going to come down to some guys are going to have to decide, do I really want to play or do I not? Because if the difference is 9 million or 11 million, you're still getting 9 million, guys.
I know.
Are you really going to sit out and miss on 9 million instead of 11 million? Are you really going to make that kind of financial decision? And every financial person that I've ever talked to says those are kinds of, you can make bad decisions. And that's an example of one of them. Just like to go back to the Deshaun Watson thing for a minute. Let's say he decides to retire. Reading some of the things that could happen depending on his contract, the Houston Texans would get back nearly $22 million if Deshaun Watson sits out. So that's not even an option for him. So guys are going to have to learn a little bit of humility and some wise business sense in the same time.
Okay, you mentioned money, and here's something kind of crazy. Thursday night, a bettor in Nevada placed a $2.3 million wager. Did you guys hear this on the Bucks?
Is he related to Tom Brady? That's the first question I have.
Right? I was recently in Vegas. We had just talked about that, and I'm glad I went because now I have a connection with Michael, and he's pretty cool. I like that. I like having you here, Michael.
Thank you.
But the funny thing was that looking at the folks betting on sports, it was the loneliest place I had ever seen. We're looking for a place to watch the game, and we're thinking, oh yeah, we'll go and see if we can, connect with other people. Watch. Everyone was 6 feet apart in their little chairs, and it just seemed so lonely and vacant. I really craved the way we used to get together, in bars and restaurants and commiserate with strangers, celebrate with strangers. We've kind of lost that, and it's sad. But can you imagine? Betting trends are going way, way up. More people are betting because we're trying to find a way to connect with sports. But seriously, $2.3 million wager.
Yeah. I hear he was actually related to the refs for that game.
Or is he related to our good buddy boxer Floyd Mayweather, who likes to drop a few coins on the next sporting event? That's the other question.
How do you know it wasn't one of us?
Because we don't have that dough. We don't get paid the big bucks on this podcast yet.
Maybe it was Chris or Tom.
Yeah.
That's why they're not here.
Yeah. They went in on that bet.
I like it. So any thoughts as we move into the Super Bowl? I know we're going to focus a little bit more on it next week, but any guys have thoughts on anything surrounding the Super Bowl? You can even touch on the Puppy Bowl, which I know is one of Josh's favorite things to
best
connect.
event every year is the Puppy Bowl.
Andy Reid's a better coach. My early line is Kansas City wins by 10 points.
I think what's really cool about the game this year is there's just so many storylines around it. It's the old Tom Brady, the old Tom Brady. I'll finger quotes, and the young up and coming Patrick Mahomes, and two guys challenging for what could be the battle for the best quarterback to ever play at Patrick Mahomes' rate. And I think this season with COVID and Tom Brady moving teams and Tampa being the first team to play a home Super Bowl, there's so many storylines around this game that make it so fascinating, and I think that make it so appealing to the human eye. With COVID, limited capacity, it's going to be a great game, and I think it's going to be really tight. I would lean Tampa Bay by a little bit, just because of the momentum they have coming into this game, and I think that they're a healthy team, and I kind of like the mantra, and I like the attitude that whole team has right now. So I'd lean Tampa slightly right now, but I'm looking forward to a great game.
Yeah. It's going to be a much more exciting game, I think, than had it been Buffalo and Tampa. So.
Okay. Halftime show.
Josh was going to say something. Sorry, Josh.
Oh, go ahead.
I'd say if Tampa Bay wants to have a chance at this, those big boys on the defensive line are really going to have to step up like they did last week. I mean, there's no way that they win. His offensive line has played great. They've been a great offensive line.
You froze, Josh.
Good players that can show up in Vita Vea, Jason Pierre-Paul. They got some players there that can really show up for them, and they need.
Actually have a pause button. That's why.
Well, Josh is just simulating what
should come with a pause button or mute.
Josh is just simulating what might happen to the Tampa Bay offensive line in Super Bowl. So he was just giving us a preview there. Unless they do their job.
Tyreek Hill, you look, he's in front of you, you blink, and he's behind you, and then it's
yeah.
Well, I think, I got to go with Kansas City just because. No, I think one of the things that Tampa will have to deal with is the fact that Mahomes is slightly more mobile than Aaron Rodgers. And Rodgers is good at avoiding the rush back there, but Mahomes is just different. And
Yeah, and can we talk about how is he different? Let's just give a little kudos. Some of us live in the greater Seattle area. There was a man back in the day who was a different kind of quarterback that opened the door for that kind of maneuvering, that kind of a maybe smaller, agile, mobile kind of
Number
quarterback.
10.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, in fairness, there have been other guys in the past, but Russell was kind of one that broke it into the mainstream.
Third
Yeah.
round pick.
I thought
You know,
Michelle was talking about Jim Zorn.
Yeah. I mean, Jim Zorn was that way. I mean, you think of Randall Cunningham,
Yeah.
guys like that.
Warren Moon.
I don't remember him being quite the scrambler, but as much. But
I think
but
he was for his time.
Mahomes just physically takes what Russell's gifts and puts him in just a bigger body. I don't know how tall he is, Rich.
He's one of the
Sounds
best.
like Kermit the Frog. So
He's
it's hard
one of the best athletes on the field.
Yeah.
On the field, period.
Yeah, and some of the stuff he does, the backhanded throws. I mean, Russell's great about throwing against throwing against
Across
the
the
grain,
body,
about
yeah.
throwing across his body. And Mahomes can do that. But there's just some throws that Mahomes has made that take that just to another level. So
Just tell us.
and Brady, but Brady,
I don't know about that though.
I got to say, I'll let you go in just a second. The thing with Brady, I think I don't hate Brady. I kind of resent him. So I'll admit that. But we've gotten to the point with where the coverage is with Brady now, where he could go and throw for 90 yards and 3 interceptions, and the coverage after the game will be about Brady winning his 7th Super Bowl. So, okay, Josh.
Yeah, I take a little exception to that because you watch the games of Patrick Mahomes and he's amazing talent, but they point out it's like I've never seen anyone throw a throw like that before. Look, he threw sidearm into the end zone on the edge. And like I've seen Russell Wilson do that exact same throw, like the exact same throw.
Well,
like
Al Michaels has a really short memory. We got to let him. Yeah, we got to let him have his moment. One real quick stat about Patrick Mahomes, showing how he is improved on the pro level. 13-16 as a starter at Texas Tech. Now 44-9 as a starter in the NFL.
Well, at Texas Tech, he probably had a defense that gave up 56 points a game too. And
that's because his head coach couldn't recruit any defensive players, but we won't get into that right now.
Hey, I asked the question, and that leads to something I asked a few minutes ago. What about college recruiting? We have this era of COVID again, and a lot of the lower you go down on the sports playing totem pole, the fewer games you had to showcase your talents. So where does that leave some of the recruiting practices for college ball, Michael?
I think it's a hard concept to wrap your head around, because you look at a program like Alabama and they played a full season, and then you look at a team like Ohio State, who had a completely COVID ravaged season, played 7 games total, I believe, with or maybe 8 with the national championship loss. And then you look at a program like Northwestern, who didn't have one positive COVID case the entire year, which is remarkable, to run an entire college football season and not have one case. So, I think the way, if I was an incoming recruit, to look at this is you have to look at, all factors. Am I going to play the most games on a national stage? Where's the TV coverage? Because who knows, you could have only 6 games, you could have 12 games, but it only takes 1 game to get on ESPN to kind of get your name known. So
okay,
I think,
but take it down a level. Take it down a level to the high school level. What about those kids looking to get a college scholarship? Man, we keep going down the levels, down the totem pole. You have less opportunity. That sucks.
I think this is one place that is, yet another place that the Pac-12 is going to get flattened yet again, because many of the top recruits in California, Oregon, and Washington are playing or played their high school seasons in other states. And I don't remember the kid's name, but he was signed with USC, ended up playing his high school season in Georgia, and is I think, is he going to Florida
Okay,
now?
great.
I mean,
He's
If
going to
you
Florida
can
now. He's
do
going to
that.
Florida now.
But we talk often about how the NFL, how professional sports are a breakout point for a lot of kids out of impoverished area, that it's an equality. It helps in equality, because if you're the best, you're going to rise to the top. That doesn't happen if you don't get seen. If your parents can afford to move you to another district or another state to play, bully for you, but the rest of the kids don't get that opportunity.
Michelle, it's going to come down to this. If you are a top 10 recruit in a sport or a top 100 recruit in a sport, it's not going to hurt you as much as the person who could be a white chip, what they call a white chip recruit, or someone who is looking to have a great senior season after having a good junior season. If you are a top recruit in the nation, your name is already known, but it gives lesser people a chance, don't have the chance to make that name for themselves during their final senior season. That's what you're going to see.
Yep.
Okay.
The power of social media.
Yeah, there you go. Well, there you go. Power of social media. Anyone else have thoughts on that?
I just agree with Rich. I mean, Damon Heward's son didn't have any trouble getting his UW scholarship, even though they haven't played a season yet. He's like trying to decide, is he going to play in a spring season or is he enrolled at UW? And that was kind of the choice he was faced with. But these guys that aren't known and maybe are, stuck where they are, it's going to be rough. And like other sports landscapes, I think the college football landscape is going to change because of that. I don't know how, but when you have guys, moving across the country so they can get their seasons in and further tilt the recruiting wars to the Southeast, that's not good for us out here.
Yeah, well, and this is one more good reason that we're so excited that Larry Scott is no longer in charge of the
Amen.
Pac-12.
Amen.
Like you mentioned, Michael, it takes one game to be noticed and get on ESPN. Unfortunately, the Pac-12 has the inability to play games not at 3 a.m.
Yeah, or the one game that they play Alabama in Dallas and they just get rolled over, so it doesn't matter anyways. Yeah,
right.
Well, and when it comes, Michelle, you were talking about kind of going down the rungs. I think it really is. When you look at the effects of the lockdown and the continued lockdown, even though scientifically and statistically there's no evidence that it is dangerous for kids, and yet so many youth sports have been canceled. Amen. And so there's the mental health aspect that is, I think, completely it's hardly ever discussed. I mean, it's starting to get more attention, but that's a huge issue in terms of kids not being able to play rec sports, high school sports. I mean, all those things. It has a huge impact that we won't even know about for years. It has a huge
impact on me. I'm not able to. You go out and play some sports, Garrick, but
I do. I did last night.
A lot of the things that I've been able to do, and that means less chocolate for me, because if I want to, stay the same size,
that balancing act, yeah.
Yeah, and that's just that's too much of a sacrifice for a human to have to make. I just want to say that right there. Thank you very much.
Chocolate is its own food group, right, Michelle?
Yeah, vitamin C, whole kind of vitamin CH, I guess you could say. One thing that I did mention before too, where COVID has affected the MLS with the collective bargaining agreement. So looking at how we play players, we talked about it with the NFL and salary caps, and man, we don't have a lot of fans in the stands unless you're Florida, which I think Florida is going to come out of COVID smelling like a rose. Come on, they're even talking about incidentally offering to host the Olympics if Tokyo doesn't. Come on, Florida. Jeez, I think we should, if we're sports fans, we're all going to move to Florida just so we can get our sports fix. Come on.
Well, I mean, they're completely open, and their COVID rates are no worse than California, and which is completely shut down.
Yeah.
So anyway,
awkward.
Yeah, Washington, Oregon, and California are the only 3 states remaining that don't have their high school sports running at this point in time.
And I'm not gonna,
actually,
trying to be
I can tell you,
political.
Michigan's in a big war about that right now too, because
Okay.
their students and superintendents and coaches associations are taking their governor to court over having shut down. They got their fall sports season in and finished in January, and they've held off on basketball and wrestling for now. But there's no rhyme or reason though to.
So as long as we're talking about youth sports and we're talking about high school sports, I want to bring up a face-off topic, and that is that our president has made a decision that transgender kids have to be recognized in public school settings, right? So that does mean that a biological male who identifies as a female can compete in female sports. And the concern that women have, since sports opportunities are much limited in comparison to men, is that will take away some of the scholarship opportunities. So I want to get your thoughts on this, guys. Let's face off. Wait, I need a soundbite on this. Where is our face-off sound? Come on. It doesn't like me. Sorry about that. It's the My Michelle Live pod. That's not what she wanted. It's one of those days. it's like rooting for my favorite team.
We'll
it's
ring
not
the
gonna
bell.
work.
Ding. All right.
Let's just face off. Let's just do it. What do you guys think?
Disrespect to Title IX, disrespect to female athletes everywhere, plain and simple. This is not a political issue. It's being turned into a political issue. I'm just going to flat out say it. No respect to legitimate female athletes.
Yeah,
it was really interesting to me this week that one of the people who came out against this was Renee Richards, who was the first transgender athlete. And she said that participation in sports, especially at the pro level, probably below that as well, that she said, even though I did it, I believe that if I had been younger when I did this, it would have been an unfair advantage against the women that I was playing against. There's things that you can't undo with surgery and hormones. So
can't change DNA, folks.
Yeah. And
Michael, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I think I agree with Rich, and I think it's definitely a topic that had to be addressed, and you know what the decision was is what the decision is going to be. So you know we kind of just have to live with that. But you know there is a big issue over where people identify in gender and what gender sports they are allowed to play. And I completely agree with everything Rich said, and I think it has more of an impact at the college level than it does at a professional level, because I think there's a lot more opportunity at the college level with so many different options ranging from track to tennis to women's basketball. And then at the professional level, you kind of dwindle it down a little bit. So I think you're going to see more of an impact at that level, and some issues that will be as a result of women's college athletics. But I'm interested to see how the next couple of years play out as a result of this decision.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's bad news because it's dangerous in a lot of ways, because you have kids that are taking like hormones and stuff that if there is a female that took those playing female sports, it would be illegal for her to take those. But then the transgender person is taking those or doing that as part of their transition that will enhance them, that'll enhance their ability. It would be illegal for other athletes to take. And in general, we've seen a lot of cases where it is a male transitioning to female playing those female sports, and they're just bigger and they dominate them. And you've seen a lot of female athletes come out against it. How am I supposed to compete against this? This is it's like a heavyweight getting to fight a lightweight in a lot of ways. And I think I'm worried about some of the danger that we'll see from some of this happening.
This has already happened. Do you remember it was Fallon Fox, wasn't it, the MMA fighter that broke the skull of their opponent? This guy who has transgendered to a woman still has all the guy strength and breaks their opponent's skull. Now, this isn't, just some, I just got out of knitting class chick. They were fighting against another professional fighter. I mean, someone who is bad to the bone. So this is come on, dangerous. Yeah, it is kind of dangerous. And there are fewer opportunities that have been hard fought from women. Me being a reporter in sports, I've had to fight against, wow, it's weird you being here, or even having played sports, going into a junior hockey sports setting where there was a presser and a guy saying, I find some of your questions have a certain naivete towards hockey. I'm like, really? Is that because I wear a bra? Because that's the only difference I can tell with my questions. It's happened. We've had to fight hard for our positions. We've had to fight hard for recognition, and there are fewer and fewer opportunities, even though the industry is growing. So to take those away just really isn't fair. So what's the solution? What do we do with folks who are dealing with transgender issues?
Well, I really feel that we need to make sure that we separate out what issues are at play here, okay? Because much of what has been argued as for why the president did this in terms of signing the executive order was because of fairness and equality. And here's where I feel like for our faith, we need to stand up and we need to treat people with respect. We need to treat people with dignity. We need to treat people, even if—
And that includes transgender people.
Absolutely, 100%. And that's my point. However, I also think we need to separate out that issue with this whole competitive sports issue. Now, I actually had a conversation with my sister this morning. We were talking about this issue, and we don't agree a lot on politics, but we were talking about, when you going down the rungs of the ladder, I play co-ed soccer. Okay. And so is this, how are you going to factor this in as well? And so I think that when it comes to collegiate sports, intercollegiate athletics and professional levels, and maybe, as someone mentioned earlier, maybe less so at the professional level, but at least at the collegiate level, you need to play based on what you were born, because that's the only way that it can be objectively fair. Because if not, as Rich pointed out, if you're taking the same steroids and you're biologically a woman, I mean, that one of your competitors is taken, you would be thrown out of the game. And yet now you're somehow allowed to— it just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, this was more about scoring political points than actually treating people fairly. Mm-hmm. And like you said, Garrick, this is mixing two issues into one, not fully addressing either one.
Yes.
That's what happens when man decides, hey, I'm smarter than the guy that built the car. And we can come up with a better set of rules. That's what this is.
And I gotta say, like you mentioned, they're turning it into a political fight in a lot of ways in something like this. This isn't about not respecting transgender people. This isn't about not believing they exist. Like that's not what this is. And that's what it's turned into in a lot of debates and arguments that you see about this topic. That's not what it is. Like I mentioned, it's unsafe and it's unfair to the women that are natural born women. Like if you're born a man, you feel like you're a woman. It's not that I don't believe you exist or don't believe that you should have the right to do what you want to do, but like it's not right and fair to the other people in this scenario. And I'm sorry that you're going through that kind of a situation, and I feel for you, and I do, but that doesn't give you the right to have free reign and just do whatever you want to do just because, right? Like just because I want to play in this women's league, I get to because I feel like I should have been a woman. Like, look, I'm sorry, that's not the way it works.
I identify as an NFL quarterback, but there has not been a single NFL team that will take that argument that I believe that I belong there. So, and it's for my own good, actually, really.
If they invited you, you would try. But yeah,
Oh,
if you can,
You
yeah,
got it. You got
if you
it.
can, if you can imagine if LeBron James decided he identified as a woman and switched to the WNBA, what do you think would happen?
This wouldn't be an issue. This
right.
would be over in it would be over in 30
Guys,
seconds.
why don't men or guys who identify as women, why don't they feel comfortable playing then on a male team? Because I don't mind playing co-ed. I have no problem with that. Softball, whatever, soccer. I don't play well in soccer. Love volleyball. I love co-ed volleyball. I don't have a problem with that. So what would be wrong with that?
Absolutely nothing in it.
Why
And
don't we
that's
consider
why I
that?
think that's why I think
Well, if you've gone through the
Go ahead,
transition
Garrick.
though, and you are taking female hormones, then you're not going to be able to compete on the same level because it does change your physiology. It doesn't change your genetic makeup, but it does change your physiology. So,
Not your strength wise, not strength wise.
well, it does diminish your strength over time.
I think that there's enough studies that say that
That's
might
true.
be arguably true.
It might be
but
arguable.
there are some
Yeah.
Well,
studies that say not so much.
There's a
So-
difference between diminishing it and taking it to the level of
True.
natural born women too.
Right.
So you're probably stuck. I don't know really what I'm talking about here, but I'm guessing you're probably stuck somewhere in between.
All right,
Right,
then we have
right.
transgender.
I
we
think
have
that
transgender team.
there's a lot of there's going to be a lot of questions of what the guidelines are now everywhere, right? Like
Right.
if like we just use the example of LeBron James tomorrow says I'd like to identify as a female, is he eligible to now play in the WNBA, or does he have
I know
to
there's a lot of
wait
teams
3
who would
years?
say, "Come on."
There's what happens
Are
if
we sure about that? Are we really sure about that?
About what?
With the WNBA welcome LeBron James, or would Sue Bird immediately?
that's
or
my
would-
point.
That's a
That's
good
my
Yeah.
question. Would
Is-
Sue Bird welcome that?
is you don't know what the standard is and what the guidelines are, and I think we're going to come down to a point down the line where we could have a new leading scorer at the women's collegiate level, and is that going to be stood as, are you the top leading scorer as a transgender female, and that could happen. So there's just a lot of ethical questions that you're going to have to consider down the line as a result. So
Now, I think the other thing that this brings up, Michael, you tell me, being in sports management, we could see something to go the other way, because we've had this as far as male track and field athletes want to participate in female track and field as a female, but they weren't as good in male sports. So you have people transitioning who
Because
want to
man,
be
that
in
could get me
female,
a scholarship.
who
Come
want
on.
to be in
Right.
female sports and say, hey, I can be real successful here if I transition. I mean, let's not fool ourselves here.
And
It's,
it is not a requirement of having, forgive me, I'll try to say this gently, of having anything cut off or to be so far down the road. What some of the concern is that I identify. I can still have a full male body. I may not have taken a single repressive kind of medication, but this is how I identify. How far do we go?
it's like Rich said, and he kind of posed the question in my direction here, but it's really hard. It's the way the human mind is built, is we always look for a competitive edge in areas, and where can we gain the most ground, and how can we be superior among our peers. So I think that's why for example, my birthday is young for my grade, so I always played with kids that were sometimes 13 months older than me, playing on the same court, in basketball, baseball, whatever that was. So there would be some years where I would say I would play down a year, because then I would be the kid that was 13 months older than and I would be kind of the leader in age wise, and I typically ended up being the better one on the field. And when I was playing with my grade, but I was the youngest and on the field, I ended up not playing to my best potential, because it's an age thing. So I kind of compare it to that a little bit of where I found the competitive edge, and I said, you know what, I need a pick back year, so let me go play in the league below. So it's a really hard thing to kind of wrap your head around it, and I think it's going to take some time for everyone to formulate an opinion and see how they feel, and we need to see it in action to really give our true feel and thought on it. But I can leave it to you guys to finish off anything more you might have on it.
Anything else, guys? Because it is about time for us to take our final shot. All right, this is where we go around the table and give a shout out, a thought, a quickie. We're going to start with Garrick.
No, don't start with me. I haven't decided
We're
yet.
going to start with Rich.
All right. Hey, thank you, Michelle. Seattle Kraken do it again. Make some headlines. July 21st is the expansion draft, only 6 months away. John Forsland, their new TV broadcaster, they've inked a deal with Root Sports for 75 games that first season.
Yeah.
Which means cord cutters can't watch them.
They're going to be competing with Mariners because it's Root Sports is like Mariners all the time. Joshua McMillen sports us up with your final shot.
Yeah, I'm just going to go back to the Mariners again. I am so excited for this team in the next couple of years. I mean, we're looking at, like, we had Rookie of the Year Kyle Lewis, right? And this next year we're probably going to see Jared Kelenic come up, and we could have Rookie of the Year Jared Kelenic. And then the year after that, Julio Rodriguez. These are two of the best prospects in baseball. And I'm not saying it's going to happen, and knock on wood, but we could have 3 years in a row of rookies in the year playing in the outfield for the Mariners. And that's an exciting prospect to me. And, we have guys like Mitch Haniger, who's going to come back this year and, rebuild some of that value. And I'm going to be interested to see if they continue to see him as a building piece moving forward, or if after he builds back some of his value, if they trade him out. We also have Tremmel sitting back in there too. So if Tremmel can come up, maybe he's another trade prospect, or maybe we trade one of the other guys, but we have an embarrassment of wealth at the outfield position right now. And I'm really excited to see how that pans out in the next couple of years here.
Brent Baker.
Yeah. His secondary shout out to Mitch Haniger, coming back from like the worst baseball injury ever.
Don't even talk about that.
Nope. Talk about blow the belt, man.
But yeah, that was horrible. Anyway, so I'm seeing, as we were on here, it just came out that the old, I think he was 89 years old, former Temple basketball coach John Chaney passed away. And he, I just shout out to him because I know he was like a defensive innovator, especially with zone defenses. One of the, along with Gonzaga, is one of like the first mid-major programs to consistently make a splash in the NCAA tournament every year with him there. So he's another big name that we've lost in this last year, but he's a guy that made a big impact in college basketball.
Okay. Let's go to Michael.
I think shout out Ron Rivera, officially cancer-free today. He's been through an unbelievable battle this past season with coaching through all the adversity on that team and really, battling for not only the city, but, for the entire country and everyone rallying and supporting him. So shout out Ron Rivera, cancer-free. And also a little shout out to one of my good friends back home, Tim Farley, who made this happen for me today and putting himself out there in Las Vegas and giving me this chance. So thank you all for having me. It's been a great last hour.
Absolutely.
Been great to have you, Michael.
I'm gonna go because Garrick, we're gonna give
I'm
you
ready.
just another minute to be ready.
I'm ready.
Me real quick. I want to give a shout out to guys who take it to a deeper level. We like to take it to the God story, because the question on My Michelle Live is, if there's a God, can we see signs of him, and what does he ask of us? And it's always a deeper story. It's always a better story. And it's always a story of hope, that kind of it factor sometimes in sports that puts you over the top and takes you through difficult times. So there's a couple of guys that put their foot to the field in football, and that's the Bucks punter and kicker, who both like to say a little quick prayer before they kick the ball. And it's just those quiet ways of living out your faith. It's not necessarily in your face, calling you names or, hitting you over the head with the Bible, but just quick and cool ways that we people who believe in God find ways to live out our faith in quiet but powerful ways. There you go. Shout out, Final Shot, and Garrick Pang. Bring us home. Pang us.
All right. Well, I know the guys are probably going to give me a hard time about this and think that I'm like kissing up to Michelle or something, but I'm going to give my final shot to Michelle, because I don't know that we've ever done that on
You're kissing
on our
up,
show.
Garrick.
Yeah, I know. But in all seriousness, I mean, Michelle has talked about people who have weathered a lot recently. I mean, this transition from live radio to doing a podcast, I mean, courageous, and some of the topics that she's addressing. I mean, she looks, for those of you who haven't tuned into the rest of her show, I mean, she talks about science. She was talking about COVID this week. She's going to be doing a special segment on homelessness, which I want you guys to tune in, because that's going to be just outstanding. And she's been a glass ceiling breaker, in terms of being a sports reporter and all these things. And she's willing to hang out with a bunch of really crazy, weird guys to do this sports show. So my shout out, final shot, I think, appropriately ending our show today, to Michelle Mendoza.
Oh my God.
Amen to all of that.
So
Yes.
Yeah, I love you guys, my brothers. Well, if you have enjoyed the program today as much as we have, like it, share it, tell your friends, because we like to get deeper to a God story. And we're in a place in our history where the world seems to fall apart. We're not sure what's going on. We need something to ground us. We need some hope. So we like sharing that with you in our sports timeout. So you can go to MyMichelleLive.com to hear all of our shows. And you can also go to Brent Baker, because his book is coming out soon. How cool
Very soon.
is that? Yeah. Tell us about
Available
that
for
real quick.
pre-sale now. So.
Oh, it is.
Yes.
Yep.
Well, I like it.
Yep.
Yeah, it's
So-
only $3.99 for Kindle right now, whereas it'll be $10 when it's released. So.
It's going to go up to $5.99 on the 1st, and then it'll be,
Uh-oh, get that
You've got
discount.
3 days to get out there and
Yeah.
get that Kindle.
Hey, guys, thanks so much for being with us today.
For more fun, go to MyMichelleLive.com.